Hey everybody, welcome back. Going to lean just a bit more into being a host this time. So I have turned on the captions, turned down the game audio, and made sure that my microphone volume is a little bit better this time. So I came to the chapter select screen, and we are presented with the chapter that we left off with the last time I recorded. So we'll just begin there and see if we can finish this game. Just as a recap, um, so this we are exploring the kind of game design, game developer library of a mysterious user named Coda. Um, our narrator was friends with Coda and has compiled his games into um, a narrated and curated uh, kind of walkthrough. It kind of feels like we're in an art gallery where there is a particular artist that we're paying attention to, and it's just kind of an in-depth look at that person and or at their kind of evolution in their work. So the games that we've been playing, these little levels, um, have been of increasing complexity, but there's still nothing that feels complete in anything that we've really played. Incomplete in the sense of that there's not a lot going on in any of these games as far as the gameplay itself goes. But what we're also learning is that this person does have a very particular point of view, and because these are games that are not necessarily quote unquote playable, which is a debate that the narrator mentions to us. Because these aren't really playable, they're just really more of a testament to whatever Coda was thinking about at the time. Roughly that's where we're at. We know that the games go through 2011. We began, I believe, in 2008. So we are roughly we're getting close to a year into Coda's game development of the 3-year library of games that we have. And we also know that this person stopped making games all of a sudden in 2011. So I am not the only one in this room. There are going to be probably kitty sounds behind me, so just so you know what that is. And let's click and get into it.
Okay, this one is tough. It's gonna kinda just spin its own wheels for a few minutes. Hang with it.
Sorry, having a background conversation, which is very hosterly of me. All right, we're gonna spin our wheels for a few seconds. Apparently, still nothing clicking. We can jump. The name of the level was Escape, or the chapter. Somebody, one of you architects, let me know what that is. I'm having like some real world sizing up issues when I look at those door frames. I'm like, I don't know if I can fit through that. Oh wait, pixels wide here. Boom. Get ready for the house music. Soundtrack is...
This is it. The whole game. And there's nothing that's particularly interesting about it. You just walk to the end of a hallway. Except, for some reason, Coda gets really fixated on this prison that has all of this modern furniture. And I don't know why, but he decides he needs to revisit this prison. He's gonna start over, use the same assets, turn it into something else. Okay, cool. Here's version 2.
A thing that really scares me in Coda's games is that, okay, let's see here. What furniture ought to go in the center of the room? TV with surround sound, a refrigerator, a giant hole in the ground. Give me that giant hole. Well, okay. Let's do a picture of a horse. Should have gone with the stoves. I'm feeling like this game is not listening to me right now. Okay. Skylight, 10 by 12 recessed electric 6-inch soft LED ceiling, lights with fluorescent trim, but live Tesla coils in each corner. Let's go with the Tesla coils. Let's go with the non-fact.
There's a bit more to this one, but still it's not really communicating anything. It's kind of just weird for weirdness' sake.
Well, isn't most...
So okay, he throws it out and starts over. This time he comes at the prison idea from a different direction. And of course, now the table is gone and you can't begin the chain of events to escape.
Oh, so he just designed hell.
Here's a version where there are no bars, but you can't actually get to the well. And then a version where the inside of the prison is the outside and the outside is the inside. Let me just blink you real quick through a few more of these. I mean, he really unloaded on this prison idea. There's nearly a dozen of them. Personally, I think it's awful to watch this, to see a person basically unraveling through their work. And for what? Like, at what point do you just go, maybe there are game ideas other than this prison that I could be working on? But Coda doesn't have that voice telling you to stop, that particular mechanism of defense against yourself. Without it, you just spiral. And so he keeps going and going and going and going and going, and then he hits on something. And he likes it. And that's it. He's done. He stops making prisons. This is the very last version of the prison game that he created, and the reason I think it works is that the prison is not actually in it.
I'm just gonna stop trying to figure out this game, because obviously it's gotta do its own thing, so. Commentary will be on an as-needed basis. Oh, I don't like this at all.
It's a conversation. And so this is what Coda wants, is to be able to talk to someone, to share what's on his mind, and to get some good advice from someone who knows. But the irony is that even in this scenario, you're still talking to yourself. You know, all of these games so far are Coda talking to himself.
So this game, this particular level, is kind of reminding me of an Interplay game that was not VOD. What is it called? The ones that are animated by movies, FMV, full motion video. That was called, I think, Frankenstein. And Tim Curry was Frankenstein, and you played the monster, and you were trying to escape. And the kind of ambiance right now, and then the building off in the distance, it's reminding me a little bit of, like, it was a point and click kind of adventure thing, but it also felt kind of like a choose your own adventure, because I feel like distinctly that you could die in that game, and it gave me the creeps, because it would be really, really quiet, and then this like eerie music would just start healing in very, very slowly, and then Tim Curry would just like pop up from places and scare you. So anyway, like I said, commentary as needed.
I can see why he considers this a fitting conclusion to the prison games. After all of the obsession and frustration, just to be told by someone you can trust that things are going to be okay. Wouldn't that be nice? So what would it look like if Coda wanted to make a game about talking to someone other than himself?
It would look like the bear level from Condemned 2.
To me, this environment is meant to represent Coda's puzzle, with the two doors on either side and a dark transitional space between.
So one of the interesting things about how this game is constructed is that I'm actually not sure. I mean, I'm pretty sure this sound is supposed to be from the game level that we're playing, but there's music in the game, and I'm not sure if that is if we're supposed to take that as the use of the narrator, or if we're supposed to take that as Coda and how he actually coded these games. So, and because music is so manipulative, it's probably an important question, and kind of an important question in context of, are we supposed to believe that Coda's a real person?
You'll notice that the quality of the art is a step up from previous games, including this new and improved chat system, which he started using from this point on. From here on out, he begins putting much more effort into the visual polish of his work, and this particular game took 2 months to create as a result.
I'd love to hear anybody's comments about like the actual design of this game. Like, I know that they mentioned he was using Source as an engine in the first chapter. Oh, I didn't mean to insult here. So, one of my favorite Let's Players, he reads everything that's text on the screen. And I'm now realizing why he probably does that, because you're not always looking at the screen. So, if I do any more of these, let me know if that's something that you want me to do. Do I need to read through whatever's on the screen? Yeah, like, am I supposed to... Oh, Metallica Vino. Let me see what book it is.
After the intense set of prison games, this house cleaning level almost feels like cleansing. It's the moment after a particularly difficult or traumatic experience where you just need to let it sit and digest inside of you, and eventually cohere into something meaningful.
That was Italo Calvino's If on a Winter's Night a Traveler, I do believe. Didn't I just clean that?
I know that Coda really liked this game. Of all of his work, actually, this was the only one that he called me up to ask me to come over and look at it. This was during a period of a few months where he was like grossly happy all the time, just walked around with a constant smile on his face.
Earlier when I said I had a really cheesy thought, I was going to say it occurs to me that one's house is a lot like one's soul. You take care of it, and it takes care of you. Huh. Don't know why I felt so weird about saying that. I get it, that's a weird thing to say to someone you just met. Yeah, you're right, that's pretty cheesy, but there's a bit of truth in it, no.
I'm glad he made this. I'm glad he found some peace. But, of course, it can't last. The music stops, your companion is gone, it's time to leave. The door at the top of the hill is now open as well. Again, you can't stay in the dark space for too long. You just can't. You have to keep moving. It's how you stay alive. Which is the whole point of the puzzle doors, right? That sooner or later you have to pick up and move. I really thought that was the point of it.
September 2009. I'm guessing it's probably like chapter 11, 12.
This one gets a bit goofy.
I really love the people with the cube heads as an idea for kind of prompting. And also, it's like it's both it's like there's a little bit of horror to it, but it's also a little bit the horror is kind of balanced to me by there's just something that makes me feel pretty empathetic about it, like it's some sort of human statement on the human condition. Have we been given an age for Coda?
About halfway through the game, the perspective shifts. And you play as the teacher. And suddenly, you discover that your teacher is just as bigoted and afraid as you are. Oh, and also you can move around the classroom now. I fell pretty hard for this one. I feel like it's one of the most relatable experiences that you can have. To assume that some other person is perfect and totally fulfilled in every way, and completely miss all of the little flaws that make them painfully human.
Okay, that
I think
one
about
spoke
this
to
game
me.
a lot these days.
That spoke to me a little bit too much, I think. So we're in 2010. Finally.
This one took a lot longer than all the others for Coda to make. It was 4 months between this and the last one. That's twice as long as it took him to make any other game before this, and it's not like it's particularly complex, so I remember I found that a little strange at the time.
I really find this interesting just as kind of like a... What if like you had a journal that was just like, instead of you writing your messages or recording them as a video or something, was a game that just kind of spoke to wherever you were in that moment. And then you can go back and play your memories. That's pretty profound, and an opportunity for a reflection that I don't think I've ever even contemplated. So that's exciting, and that alone has made it worth it to play this. And that was terrifying, that sound. Hmm. Hmm. Oof. I hate this.
The game ends with this eerie premonition of what's going to happen next in Coda's life. The
Uh-oh.
solution to social anxiety, to fears of having to perform and having to chase success, the answer for Coda is to withdraw, to hide himself away. Which is what leads to scenarios like the stairs that slowed you down several games ago, where it just becomes harder and harder to access Coda's inner landscape because he keeps retreating. He just keeps backing away from possible connections to anyone other than himself. And to be honest, I didn't consider it very healthy when I first played this game. You know, it looked to me like he was trying to justify the idea of just disconnecting yourself from the world. And that wasn't what I wanted for him or for his games. Because I feel like a lot of his games are inviting me to connect with this person, to bring him closer. But what can you do? After this, Coda went off and took another 5 months to make a new game.
That one, to play this game properly, you must keep your eyes closed. Click to begin the game. Well, before we do that, that one actually, I could feel the kind of anxiety and darkness in that one in ways that the other ones, I mean, like, there's been darkness kind of throughout all of this. And I think that the most optimistic level, or the most, like, feel good level, was about routine. When these games have really, like, there's like something routine about his making of games. And like that, it's just an iteration after iteration after iteration, trying to get to something. But I mean, the way that we're being presented this is like it's his video game diary. But it feels like it's more about experimenting with what he wants or needs. And maybe his perception of what those things are changes, but and that's why the games are changing when they do. But it really feels like it's the searching for something and just kind of like a weird madness. Wow. Okay. Oh God. Yikes. Oof.
You should probably open your eyes if you haven't already. It's pretty much impossible to solve otherwise. And there is a solution, by the way.
It's uncomfortable. It's weirdly compelling. Interesting. Okay. These games' power as metaphor is definitely increasing.
Like I said, I was getting concerned. First off, he's never been this explicit in his work about exactly what he's thinking. So where's that coming from? But then even weirder, his work has potentially stopped being an outlet for him. Not like he's having trouble iterating on ideas, but he literally just can't think of new ideas anymore. And in person, he was being a lot more distant than usual. Like, you know how sometimes a person will just deflect anything that you say in order to keep themselves disconnected all the time? It was that kind of thing. Here was the point in my relationship with Coda where I really started to wonder if he needed my help in some way.
Just now?
His games are going to get more desperate from here on out.
Oh boy.
After this game, it's almost 6 months before he finishes something new.
Not happy about the desperation. This is imagery that might be fruitful. Creatively. That's not a metaphor. I mean, look at this. Look at this.
If the last game featured Coda talking explicitly about his creative frustrations, this one turns it up to 11. Now, put yourself in my shoes playing this. Here's a friend whose work is exhibiting signs of struggle, frustration, anxiety, depression, even. And yet, still, he keeps making games. He keeps throwing himself into the grinder even when he clearly doesn't have the energy for it anymore. Why? What is it for? Because from my perspective at the time, and just what I knew of him, this was a result of how isolated he was. He was in his own little bubble, just sitting at his computer all day, not really showing these games to anyone, not releasing them onto the internet, and so he didn't have anyone outside of himself to connect with. He had no outlet to ground himself on. You can't talk yourself out of loneliness. It doesn't work that way. You can't be the one writing both the questions and the answers. Then there's no movement. Then there's no circulation. If all of your anxieties are being channeled into your work, then if the work ever fails, you have no backup and you're just going to crash.
Keep saying that creation is easy.
Seeing this game at the time that he made it, it looked really unhealthy to me. I was watching him do this to himself, and I hated it. I hated seeing him so trapped. It's like, video games are not worth this amount of suffering. This is someone I really cared about, and I used to get so much joy out of seeing him create. For him to suddenly become angry and frustrated like this, it was the worst thing for me. I don't know. This is what I felt at the time. I don't know how else to explain it. I wanted it to stop more than anything. It never felt so rotten. I needed more than I had ever needed anything for this to stop.
This is the first time we've seen a full-bodied figure.
But it didn't stop. After finishing this one, Coda takes another 7 months and comes up with a new game.
Wow, so we just jumped to 2011. And I don't know what month he stopped making games in 2011, but that means we're pretty close to the end. I think. Gray on gray. Best color choices. Oh dear.
And of course, it's the machine.
You stopped. Your work was keeping us healthy? How could we possibly go back to trusting you to do this job? You know that feel. I've been so alone. Apologize for leaving me. I was not expecting this, but as I keep playing this game, it's starting to feel incredibly familiar. This feels like the aftermath of a trauma. Like the creative draining that comes from your brain not working the way that you thought it should. We do not need its games. We gotta show it that we are not failures. Ooh. Getting really good at metaphors. Oh boy.
Remember, you can click to fire the gun.
Thank you. Thank you, narrator. Isn't that what you're scared of, having to live without your precious creations,
self-destructive.
having to deal with
And
yourself?
At the time that I first played this game, shortly after he made it, here's what I'm thinking to myself. I'm thinking that Code is stuck in his own head, and that it's having a very negative effect on him, and that all he needs to do is just start showing his work to people, to get some actual feedback on his games. It might get him out of isolation. And so, as I'm thinking this, I realized that I could be the one to initiate it. Because it would never occur to Coda to start actively soliciting feedback, so what if I did it for him? If he could see the difference it would make to have more actual conversations with other human beings, would that bring him out of his mental spiral? Would it give him confidence in himself? Would it bring meaning back into his work?
Kind of like this effect.
So I started showing Coda's work to people. I took this one, and the islands which you just played, the theater, the notes, the house cleaning game, and some of the prison escape games. I brought them to people that I knew and trusted. I asked their opinion. And the great part is that they really loved his games. You know, the point of it all was just to give him some external reference point, but they genuinely loved his work. There was nothing for him to be afraid of.
Put down your weapon.
Can you see why I felt like this was the right thing to do? Because it's the thing that I always feel like I need, to be told that my work is good, that I am good. When someone really connects with a thing that I've made, when they see themselves purely in my work, there's nothing that feels better. And I got to give that very same feeling to my friend. I did something, I really felt like I'd done something good, like I was a good person. I felt like there was a friend who was in trouble and was unhappy and maybe didn't like themselves, and I could fix it. If I could give him this gift, maybe I could fix the problem. When they told me how much they enjoyed his games, it was the best feeling. It was the absolute best feeling. It made me feel so happy, so beautifully, beautifully happy. So anyway, Coda finishes this game, and then really he just kind of takes off for a while. So this is June of 2011, and I didn't hear anything from him for several weeks, I guess. And so out of nowhere, one day I get an email, and it's got a private link to a new game of Coda's. This one is called The Tower, and to my knowledge, it's the last game that Coda ever made. So let's take a look.
I don't feel like this is gonna feel good, what we're about to watch or play. Music's ominous already. Oh no. Ugh. Okay.
And this is where I have trouble saying anything meaningful about Coda's work. Because more than anything else, the tower just feels distant. It feels like it's trying to distance itself from the world. It's a very cold game.
I think when we
This
were at
room
the
actually has a maze in it.
Broad, we saw an Iranian film or something called Possession. I'm getting
Except
some
that all the
vibes
walls
from
of the
that
maze
here.
are invisible. And then every time you touch one of the walls, there's this awful flashing and noise, so the experience is really miserable. The game goes beyond not being meant to be played, it actually seems to despise the player for trying to play it at all. But I do want to show you the rest of the levels, so when you're ready to continue, press enter and I'll put a bridge over the maze.
Yep, had enough, thanks. I think I'm on the Pantone Road here. Yellow Pantone, Yellow Road.
And to be fair, it's not like this is the first game that's needed some modification to be playable. Like the house cleaning game. You know, that one used to actually loop the cleaning chores and you just cleaned a house forever. I had to cut it off so that you could exit the house and the game would actually end. But that game had an idea that it was actually trying to communicate. What's the deeper idea behind the invisible maze? The only way past this challenge is to randomly guess the 6-digit code. Like the invisible maze, it's frustrating to me, because it's the opposite of everything else that Coda has made. It doesn't encourage thought or engagement. It doesn't ask anything of me, except a lot of my time.
Mm-hmm.
If I could have reached him during this time, then maybe I could have asked him, but I couldn't. I still don't really understand why this is here. I'll put the code on the ground for you here, though, so that we can move on. The switch to open this door is actually on the other side of the door, meaning that it's literally impossible to solve from this side. So even if you somehow brute forced your way through the first 2 challenges and you got to this point, there's actually just no way to progress. And it's scary for me, the idea of Coda cutting himself off entirely, just saying, you know, that's it, that's the end of the conversation, not giving me any way to fix the problem. I feel like a failure, I guess, when I can't fix the problem. But I can open this door for you, so let me do that.
A lot of broken trust being represented by like a fortress and
was I a failure
impossible
for not understanding this game?
Puzzles.
I mean, I don't know why I would be. It's not like everything needs to have a solution, but I feel it somehow. I feel like I failed, and I don't understand why.
I mean, in some way, the other games are like welcoming somebody to connect, exactly like the narrator's saying.
It's June of 2011. I'm playing this for the very first time, and as I'm playing, I'm thinking to myself, I don't know this person. I have no idea who this person is. It wasn't the guy I knew, it wasn't my friend. I had come to so many conclusions from looking at all of his work up to this point, and then suddenly none of them...
There's some imagery. Yeah, I mean, comparatively, like, this is... You broke my trust. You've already... Like, I was trying to welcome you into myself and kind of trying to figure out who that is.
I had been trying to, though. That was the thing. For
and then you
years,
showed all these experiments and
to
trying to decide who I am.
Actually was and
you showed
what
them
he
to
stood
somebody
for.
else.
I asked him so many times to please just tell me what his games mean to him. I asked him please to tell me what the 3 dots mean. And he wouldn't.
I should stop talking over the narrator, but I'm never sure when he's going to show up. But yeah, so this just feels like broken trust to me. Like, all these games were ways of me trying to explore who I was, and I was sharing that with you, and that was actually this really intimate act. And so you just took this intimate act and you bundled it up as if it was something that I wanted reviews for, rather than maybe this shared exploration. Because we're not actually sure where Coda's games are being, if I may be misremembering, but it sounds like the narrator was pretty much the only person he was sharing these games with. So
I just felt so strongly that if I could have connected with him, that if I could have somehow made his work my own, that I would finally be once and for all happy. It was that I needed to see myself in someone else. I needed to be someone other than me. But he stopped and left. And it felt somehow like I had failed.
I think inarguably you had. You had failed. But this is, very lonely.
Where did I screw up?
When you mistook his goal, I believe, which you thought was anxiety and depression. Oof.
I'm the reason that you stopped making games, aren't I? It's because of what I did. I poisoned it for you.
A weirdly powerful statement.
I don't think I ever told you this, but when I took your work and I was showing it to people, it actually felt... it felt as though I were responsible for something important and valuable. And the people who played them, they treated me like I was important. They really listened and cared about what I had to say. Even though I was showing your work, I felt good about myself. Finally. For a moment, while I had that, I liked myself.
Wait. Our narrator as adding?
And then you stopped, and I didn't have anything left to show people. I just had to be with myself. And as soon as that happened, there was no feeling at all. Nothing. Less than nothing. What does that mean? I'm afraid that I did something really stupid because I don't like myself.
And when you finally see what I am talking about, don't say anything.
That's why I'm releasing this collection of your work, is because I haven't been able to find any other way to reach you. I've tried everything. And so a part of me has hope that if I put this compilation out into the world, and if I put my name on it, that maybe enough people will play it so that it'll find its way to you, so that I can tell you that I'm sorry. I know I screwed up. if I apologize to you truly and deeply, will you start making games again? Please. I need to feel okay with myself again, and I always felt okay as long as I had your work to see myself in. I mean, is something wrong with me? Because I know that I did an awful thing, and I'm doing it again right now. Like, I'm showing people your work, but I can't stop myself from doing it. That's how badly I need to feel something again, like I'm an addict. There has to be something wrong with me. Can I apologize? What if I tell you I was wrong? Will that work? Will that fix it? I don't know. I don't think it will, but there's nothing else that I can do. Just tell me what you want. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please, start making games again. Please help me. Please give me some of whatever it is that makes you complete. I want whatever that wholeness is that you just summoned out of nothing and you put into your work. You were complete in some way that I never was. And I want to know I want to know how to be a good person. I want to know how not to hate myself. Please. I'm fading, and all I want is to know that I'm going to be okay.
Well, okay.
More love, more praise, more people telling me that I'm good. Always more. It's like a disease.
Oh, oops.
Solution.
Ooh.
I guess if someone had told me ahead of time that he just really enjoyed making prison games, maybe I wouldn't have thought he was so desperate. I wouldn't have told so many people that he was depressed. Maybe he just likes making prisons.
Reminds me of that staircase in the huge room in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the one that Kenneth
Even
Branagh did.
now, the
which is
disease is
terrible.
telling me to stop. Don't show people what a shitty person you are. They'll hate you.
So this is the epilogue, and we have not been given a date. We have not been told who designed this. Right now, it's just the narrator
If I knew that my life depended on finding
talking to
something to
himself.
be driven by other than validation, what would that even be? It's strange, but the thought of not being driven by external validation is unthinkable. Like, I actually cannot conceive of what that would be like. What now? I think I need to go. And I'm sorry, because I know that I said that I would be here and I would walk you through this, but I'm starting to feel like I have a lot of work to do. I have a lot that I need to make up for, and so I'm just gonna... Okay.
Ugh. That never feels good. Like a grain elevator? I like the feel of this level. Architecturally. Feels like a museum. Which I guess is what all of these games kind of are. Little museums of moments. I know I said I'd lean more into being a host, and I feel like I keep mumbling, so sorry about that. Are we gonna die or are we gonna float? Like the end of waking life. Is it a prison or a brain? I like some of the music cues.
Turn back from this cave. You said, let me prove that I'm brave. Let me keep going. But the cave goes for miles and miles and miles, and you're so tired, but I know that you're strong.
Okay. So, um, the song, that was the credit for the song. And I'm curious if the credits give us any more. Interesting. Okay, so that was the beginner's guide. Not what I expected at all. Um, and ultimately pretty poignant. I felt um, pretty sure throughout that this was, you know, meant to be a narrative game. That it's not, you know, what it's presenting itself as is like the story about. Excuse me. So like the story that it's giving us is not it's it's not true, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And that this is fictional. Um and but it I really did feel like I always had a foot in the door of it being real. That there was just enough plausibility in what was being presented that it felt like it could be a real, like what it was presenting itself as. But it was really the last level that we were told that Coda designed. When our narrator kind of loses it, that was the first time that I felt like it had confirmed what I thought it was. Even though, I mean, I guess that there's still room for it to be true. I don't think it is. And I feel like if I had somebody else here to talk to about it, they would say, yeah, obviously it's not real. But still, like being within it, and just it felt very authentic to, as a message of loneliness, as a message of, like the narrator's, kind of like becoming a scholar of this eccentric friend, and like gaining clout from that. That feels fairly, um, that feels like a fairly real story that could exist. Um, but the I find it really interesting though that so I'm just gonna leave it at that. That it's probably definitely fiction, but that there's an authenticity to the feelings within it that feel like it's not without some sort of origin, which is how I've talked about like the movie Get Out before. That Get Out is really kind of a lifetime of microaggressions that Jordan Peele has probably experienced and then put into a film. To create this, this horror. So I feel like that this is not a story without origin, I guess, but without real life origin. But as far as the actual story of the beginner's guide, it does feel like I think part of what makes it feel a little bit more authentic to me is that I don't feel like the narrator understands. Like, even by the end, the narrator still feels like they've hit wide of the mark of what Coda's games were supposed to mean. Um, Even though that the self-reflection that it leads to, that's compelling and feels like the real point, right? Is that this person is spending so much time becoming a scholar of another person and trying to build that into something that means something to him, right? So, our narrator is Davy. Davy is very much seems to be a person who has other friends or other hobbies, other interests, other whatever, or at least that's kind of how it feels, because he keeps calling Coda the one to be, keeps saying that Coda is the one that's cut off, disconnected, dissociated, whatever, depressed. Um, but what we can also see in um, in Coda's games, I feel more strongly about the interpretation of Coda's games as being statements, but being intimate ones. And that's not necessarily in a romantic way. Like, this is a friend, and that they're an exploration of ideas, and that this person is just intensely personal, maybe intensely shy. Um, and, feeling like this is a kind of a um, this is kind of a stand-in for communication, right? Like, maybe this isn't a person who is able to receive communication very well and is just having a lot of trouble connecting to other people. And the way that he shows that he cares and is to talk to somebody else about himself. And so if these games kind of stand in for some sort of communication, like non-traditional communication between a person who is perhaps short on tools for how to explain themselves, and has to explain themselves in a three-dimensional space, because their words don't fit, or because the sound of their voice doesn't fit, or whatever. So that these are the most effective and in kind of like complete ideas that this person can produce for somebody else, even though that they are ideas that take months to create. Although we're told that the last level that Coda did, our our narrator got it within 3 weeks. So I'm not sure if that's supposed to mean that like it was something that he had been working on, or like that he felt so angry after what had happened, that he made that game in just 3 weeks, like just on pure emotional energy. So, I mean, I will just say that this is the first. I mean, it's been a while since a game made me think this well, or well, think this well as it works too, but think this hard about what it was trying to say. And just like the narrative layers here are really, really fascinating. I also will say that I mean, I think I'm going to be thinking about this one for a while. Again, was not expecting this at all, was not planning. I mean, I've seen a little bit of the Stanley Parable, which, as I mentioned in the last video, designed by the same guy. And I played a little bit of it and thought it was interesting and thought it was something that I could come back to, but wasn't like, completely and deeply like hooked on whatever its premise was. So me just clicking on the beginner's guide because, oh, hey, I have it for some reason, which isn't surprising. I'm sure it was like $1 sometime on a Steam sale. But just clicking on it and not expecting something to be really that well written. I generally find that when games try to be philosophical, they're badly written. And that there are very few games that make me feel like, oh, that's a really interesting way to kind of think about problems or think about ideas or people. An example of that, of a game where I've gotten maybe a similar feeling, was Disco Elysium, which is not one that I've actually finished. And I think that there's too much narrative setup. It's definitely, you have to think within its world to kind of fully get it, get what it's trying to do. So it doesn't feel like it's definitely one that you feel like you have to learn about the world to really get it. And that means that it's not as, like, the beginner's guide in comparison feels like immediately translatable. It's relatable in what it's saying at the same time as the kind of art criticism voice that the narrator is using actually adds a really interesting layer to the game. I mean, I wouldn't say that it was like, all A tier, like top tier usage of that language and that kind of format, um, but it wasn't uneven either. Like, it was consistently above average as far as its voice went. And when thinking about the game levels, like in conjunction with that, there's really something special here. And I could see like keeping this in my back pocket as a game that when somebody's looking for something cerebral, or maybe they're working through some sort of writer's block or some sort of like creative block. I think that I would keep this in mind as one to suggest as, well, here is a game that is trying trying interesting things that are unconventional, and the setup for the game is interesting. The meta narratives that are going on, and that there's a meta narrative to the meta narrative about the narrator himself. I mean, that's a pretty complex story to tell, and I think that this does it well, and it does it in a way that, I mean, there were moments in the kind of hopelessness that the narrator was reading into Coda's work that Coda kind of disowns and says, no, you're putting that on me, that's not how I feel. But I mean, like the level where you're on the bridge and you're supposed to be blind, and you're and there's the door is on an asteroid crashing into the ship, right? That felt I felt the anxiety that felt like it was coming off of that one. So, I feel like Coda is a little bit of an unreliable narrator in that, like in that farewell letter that he writes to Davy at the end of the game, at the end of the last level that he sends to Davy, where he says, thank you for your interest in my games. Don't contact me again. The part where he says, like, I wonder if you think I'm making these for you. If I said that they had some meaning, would that matter to you? Would that make you stop? I think maybe that the narrator has presented us Coda as this person who has himself figured out. And so when Coda says those things at the end, it feels like, oh no, Coda like knows exactly what he wants, and we've been wrong the entire time, and this is just him lashing out against Davy for not following his wishes. But on the other hand, I don't know that that's fair. I don't know that it's fair to assume that that Coda has himself figured out. I don't think that these games represent a mind that is fully embracing. I mean, yeah, I see him as being internally driven. I think that the narrator got that right. But I don't feel like Coda is necessarily like that image of himself that he presents in that last letter. I don't know that that doesn't feel like an accurate self-image to me. Just from, like, if we're playing these games as pieces of his personality, that doesn't seem to come through that he's not feeling anxiety and he's not depressed and he's not all these things. To me, it feels like a game designer who literally has an audience of one and is coding pieces of himself into these levels for one person to play. That doesn't feel like somebody who like I could see this being a hobby, but it doesn't feel like somebody who maybe completely knows themselves or is completely accepted themselves, um, necessarily, because because we're shown this game developer like literally using these games to communicate. We're not really told about any sort of communication, um, between games. Like it feels like the conversations are either about the games or they're about nothing. Um, but we're also not sure that that Coda was only sending them to Davy. So, um, it's kind of just shows like we actually don't know what's going on. And then that line where um, the narrator says, I just have this, like, I'm going through this level and I just think I don't know this person. And maybe that is it. Like, um, maybe these are just like this is like a cabinet of curiosities, that Coda keeps and, sends out to certain people who are willing to play them and tell them that they played them. It doesn't feel like he's looking for approval necessarily, just maybe attention um, and some sort of relationship through his work. I mean, like, making other people play your games to understand you is definitely setting the rules. And is definitely making it to where you have this home court advantage where other people have to come to you and they only have as much access as you literally allow them. And even though Davy was willing to like dig through the code and find the answer to say the number puzzle, or was willing to kind of, take off the walls to see how the level was designed or whatever. Like, um, that, when Davy, or when Coda says in his final letter, you've so infected my personal space. And like being around you makes me physically ill. So, um, I mean, that to me feels like, maybe even like long before, um, that last, or that transgression from Davy, maybe long before that, Coda had begun, like divorcing himself, and like maybe the prison metaphor, um, maybe that wasn't about him. Maybe that was about, um, like some light level of punishment or torture, or like pushback against Davy's interest in him, and how it maybe was beginning to feel predatory, or maybe beginning to feel like exploitive. That there was something that Davy was getting from Coda's work that was not Coda's intent. That he was, reading beyond. Maybe there were moments of, like maybe it was kind of akin to somebody like, uh feeling somebody's fingers go through your mental Rolodex, right? Like trying to figure you out in a way that is outside of the rules that you've prescribed. The rules literally being, the structure of the game itself, like what is possible. And for our narrator, Davy, to continue to dissect these games and look for the unobvious solution, right? So when maybe that's part of what's going on in that last level with the flashing walls and um the impossible door, like maybe those were kind of tests, honestly, tests of Davy. And when Davy like literally dissects the game to figure out how to keep going, like randomly guessing the number or whatever, or not, he didn't, like figuring out the number from the coding and whatnot. Like those were three times that we see the narrator um, bend the rules of the game, and refused to accept that there wasn't a solution. And that it's only after all of that that we finally come to the letter that Coda has written him. So maybe Kodo, it was kind of like a let's see if you still don't get it. Take this test and you failed it 3 times. So we can't be friends anymore. Anyway, I haven't thought about like I said, I haven't thought about a game this thoroughly in a while because I haven't. Most games aren't really brain food. They are mostly, or not thinking food at least. They are puzzles at best. And the skills. There are skills that can be required that don't translate well into anything else. So like I'm more like, I mean, a first person shooter, like, okay, yeah, you click really well, and you have decent motion detection or whatever, but like what does that translate into as a skill? So I really do lean towards games that make me feel sharper. Either they're honing the skills, or they're giving me new skills, or they're teaching me things. So it's really rare to find one that is actually intellectually challenging. That it doesn't, that it is aiming for something strange and it might fail, but that at some point along the way there's going to be something compelling in there. So yeah, kudos to the Beginner's Guide. And I could definitely see this being one that I come back and take a look at in later, after a few years, and see how it hits differently. I also think that part of the reason why it resonated so well is because I identify with both the issues the narrator was reading into Coda's situation and the narrator's situation himself. Not necessarily the betrayal, but the being externally driven, which is definitely I've heard it called an external locus of power, where you allow things to happen to you, or you have to have some sort of feedback from your environment and from people around you to feel like you're functional and good and worth it. And in a pandemic, that becomes very, very stark. So sorry, I had to sneeze. So yeah, anyway, kudos to this game. I've been going for an hour and a half, and probably 20 minutes of that has been talking, so I'll go ahead and stop. But yeah, that was a cool experience and gave me a lot to think about, even in just the logic of the game and the layers of the storytelling, but also what the story itself is trying to say, who these two characters are, and the idea of reliable narrators here, or unreliable narrators, as well as just thinking about it as a singular gaming experience, and what does it mean to, kind of throw the rulebook out the window when it comes to what you expect from a game, right? And the idea of this being kind of set up like a museum of like these vignettes, playable vignettes from a person's life, and then really it becomes about two people's relationships, their relationships to each other. That's really interesting. Anyway, I'll stop there, and if you made it to this point, well, good on you.